am a DOT main, and I have been a DOT main ever since day one of Kafka's release. I'm sure that everybody's hyping themselves up for the release of Fei Xiao, and considering how Robin is one of the best characters in the game right now, her return is also looking very appealing. Yet, I don't want to let DOT fly under the radar here. It's also an incredibly strong, competent, and most importantly, meta team that feels wonderful to play. So, as an incredibly dedicated DOT main, I felt the need to make a full video on the team to do it justice. And today, I aim to tell you about Kafka Swan's biggest pros and cons. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. I think the most important thing when playing a video game is that you're, well, having fun. Kafka Swan teams offer an incredibly unique playstyle that I feel is a really cool departure from regular crit-based teams. This is mostly because of how Kafka works. Her main role is detonating DOTs. So essentially, if you have DOTs on the enemies, then using Kafka's skill, ult, what have you, will trigger the DOT damage on the enemy again. Pair this with Black Swan, who has the potential to do some extremely powerful DOT procs. Her damage potential is the means by which all is revealed. If you get that, then you're based. Anyways, instead of having to wait until the enemy's turn every time in order for Black Swan to do her thing, Kafka's detonations can proc the strong wind DOTs on the enemy. Now, if you were to build an extremely high-speed Kafka so that she could constantly do this, you'd be proccing powerful Arcana DOTs a lot. See what I'm getting at? You get a bunch of DOT DPS out before the enemy's turn even begins. There is literally nothing more satisfying than Kafka's turn starting than using her skill and seeing a large chunk of the enemy's HP get depleted. And that's not even the full story. Wait until the enemy's turn does start. Oh boy, then you get to watch in satisfaction as your foe's HP bar depletes as if a parasite was leeching onto it. And it, more often than not, will act as the finish off on your enemies because of how much damage you've already landed on them thanks to DOT detonations. These two are especially hilarious in pure fiction. Black Swan's Arcana stacking goes crazy in this game mode, and don't even get me started on how satisfying it is to launch off Kafka's burst and then watch her completely off a full row of enemies. Pure fiction is such a joke with these two, and I get 40k points every time. Though, do keep in mind that my Black Swan is E1S1 and my Kafka is E0S1. Yet with that being said, I still think that even with lower investment levels, you're in for a freaking goofy time with these ladies in pure fiction. The gameplay feel is like nothing else in Honkai Star Rail. The best comparison that I can think of for DOT teams is that it's like Hyperbloom in Genshin, except with a much higher ceiling investment-wise. It's so ridiculously good considering that you need 0 crit stats to build a team. And that's the thing. If you're sick of pulling and playing the next new crit DPS after the next new crit DPS, DOT teams are such a shakeup because no other team in the game plays like them. Even Firefly break teams don't do any residual damage instances when the enemy's turn starts. Yes, the damage doesn't require crit either, but you still have to actively wait for your DPS's turn to do damage. The best way that I can describe Kafka Swan is that you are constantly doing damage. No matter whose turn it is, yours or the enemy's, there is some form of waste being laid onto your enemies. It's dopamine if it were a Honkai Star Rail team. Anytime I come back to Honkai Star Rail after not playing it for a few weeks and I launch a Kafka burst, I remember why I love playing all the combat content in this game. This damn team. Needless to say, yes, DOT is my favorite archetype in all of Honkai Star Rail, thank you very much. I don't care how a crit DPS is presented, they are still a crit DPS. It makes no difference to me if the unit does follow-up attacks or regular turn-based DPS. DOT teams feel like something actually fresh. And you know what the literal best part about all of this is? Kafka Swan DOT teams are meta. Like, this is a team that you would actually want to go out of your way to play. I think the power level of this team is extremely comfortable. No, it isn't as broken as, say, a Firefly Break or Acheron team, but it's definitely above the more average units of this game. If Firefly Break, Acheron, and Fei Xiao were the 3 best teams in the game right now, then I'd make the bold claim that Kafka Swan Dot is the 4th best team in the game. However, it is up for debate though. You could knock that down to the 5th or 6th when considering Boot Hill and Dr. Ratio, but it's still definitely a team in the upper echelons of the meta. Plus, another thing with being meta is being future-proof. Honkai Star Rail has constant power creep. Most niches are always getting replacements. In Honkai Star Rail, Kafka is essentially a driver. She drives the team by constantly proccing more DOTs for the DOT DPS. Who is Black Swan in this case, while still contributing plenty of her own electric shocks. It's very hard to replace a driver, because even if Black Swan were to get power crept, that is simply a Kafka buff because of the wild driver synergy that I mentioned before. All this going insane over driving, yet Blade's the Stellar on Hunter with an actual license. So DOT teams feel a lot more safe from power creep because the core of a team is pretty much fixed of Kafka, a DOT DPS, raw Mei, and a sustain of sorts. Take a shot of water for every time I've said DOT by this point, man. Yet, dude, it'd be hard to power creep Black Swan because she does damage, and a lot of it. So if they made a better Black Swan, that would literally only further Kafka's meta position, making way for a new era of DOT. With that being said, as of now, in this current day and age, they both feel like really safe pulls because they seem to be a lot safer from the rampant power creep that this game is currently facing right now. They're future-proof separately as well, which I will soon cover in a later section. Hawkeye Star Rail also has multiple endgame modes, and I doubt that they're gonna stop at Apocalyptic Shadow. I've personally found that Kafka Swan is able to endure all 3 major endgame modes that Hoyo has put out so far. Pure Fiction, as I've already mentioned, is wild with this combo. Enemies get fried instantly, and the nice thing is that Black Swan will constantly apply new Arcana stacks to each new enemy wave. Literally no enemy could ever dream of surviving the wave of ailments that Kafka and Black Swan can lay onto them. Both units are also very good in AoE in general, as they both have blast hit skills and fully AoE bursts. It's easily DOT's best game mode. I laugh in the face of new Pure Fictions and can run 20k points nonsense on the other half because of them. MOC feels very pleasant with these two as well, but team DPS is simply so high to the point where bosses also absolutely get cooked. Massive bonus points if it's an MOC where the enemies are electric weak and wind weak. Their synergy with Kafka constantly popping off Swamp Rocks works great for chipping down at the HP of bosses. And their damage feels even meatier if you break an enemy that has the Super Break red health bar after breaking them. The DPS is even funnier. I'd say Apocalyptic Shadow is their weakest point, but the thing is that you play this team with raw Mei primarily. Apocalyptic Shadow wants you to break the enemies, so if you're breaking them, then you're still performing really well. These two are definitely not on Firefly or Fei Xiao levels when it comes to this game mode, but they will still manage to clear it. I will add that instead, you can even consider Kaf Swankaron. This allows you to free up raw Mei for a super break team on the other half, play Acheron who's great in AS, play her with Black Swan who is a pretty good teammate for Acheron, while also still getting the crazy DOT synergy off. My main problem with this team is skill points, and you have to Acheron basic most of the time, but the sheer amount of stacks that the other two generate typically make up for this. You are gonna have to play a skill point positive healer like Gallagher or Locha though. So if you're worried that you'll be pulling these two for only one game mode, nah, even though Pure Fiction is their best, you'll still get super clean MOC cycles and fine enough AS runs. I also can't praise the Kafka Swan team without gushing over how good the high investment potential of these two are. I'm gonna start with Black Swans because I own her E1 S1. Black Swan's E1 is crazy. It's such a wild form of damage increase that really elevates the meta position of a team. I have literally only got good things to say about it, plus it's about a 25% increase to Black Swan's overall performance. Same goes for her Light Cone. This is all crazy because while Black Swan is already such a killer unit at E0 S0, if you want to invest more into the team as a long-term endeavor, this will really raise the team's overall standing on your account by a huge chunk. Kafka's E2 is the main thing that I'm eyeing up when it comes to praising her vertical stellar Jade-based investment. This is a permanent upgrade for all future DOT units, and if Kafka wasn't already definitively best for all DOT DPSs, well then shoot, now she truly is. While her Light Cone is replaceable with an S5 Good Night Sleep buff for just talking personal damage here, Kafka's Light Cone also has really nice general account value. You can use it on Acheron if you don't have her Sig for more alt stacks, and it's honestly not that far off of Acheron's signature Light Cone performance-wise because of this. Or you could even use it on Black Swan and Acheron teams funnily enough for the same reason of generating Acheron more alt stacks. There is only value upon value to be found when looking at the investment that you can pour into these teams. Great stuff. Another neat pro is that the components of this team are good elsewhere. Black Swan can work with Acheron as I mentioned earlier, and even more so if your Black Swan is E1 and /or is wearing Kafka's Light Cone. Black Swan can also be the head of her own team in Pure Fiction if you have an E4 Sampo. It isn't going to be anywhere near as strong as the Kafka edition of this team, but you'll still clear well enough. Black Swan's E1 in general makes her quite the sublime, flexible unit, and even at E0, you'll still find her to be a pretty great Nihility partner for Acheron. Other major players in a DOT team such as raw Mei and Robin can easily be swapped into their own powerful respective best in slots of Firefly Super Break and follow-up attack Hyper as well. Kafka, as I've already mentioned, will always be relevant for DOT teams. Unless a better driver for them comes out, Kafka is always going to be the peak choice for all future DPSs that work for this team to come. Detonation is truly a broken mechanic, and Kafka was certainly ahead of her time upon release. Definitely not me coping because I was still a dedicated Kafka main even back when she was mid. So on the whole, it's a pretty safe team to invest into because even if this specific DOT team falls apart one day, you can repurpose pretty much every major player in the team. There is one pretty big thing to consider though. I made the video for these units as a pair for a reason, because Kafka without Black Swan, remember when I go Kafka mid back in the day not too long ago? Thing is, I've already drilled it into your head by this point. Kafka isn't really a DPS so much as she is a driver, the same way that Child in Genshin Impact is for Xiangling. Her crazy power level comes directly from how good the DPS she's detonating is. Black Swan was such an unfathomable upgrade over Sempo that I literally do not know how else to emphasize it. It's like going from eating rocks and bricks to eating really tasty cereal. Listen, 4-star DOT units aren't bad, but holy crap, Black Swan makes them all look like a joke. For this reason, if you aren't pulling for Black Swan, then don't pull for Kafka first. I cannot stress this enough. Take it from somebody who mained Kafka during her literal dark ages. You're getting nothing out of doing so, except one of the coolest characters in all of Hoyoverse. I mean, that's a pretty good trade-off, but you get the point, I hope. Get Black Swan first if you have neither. She's much better in solo DOT than Kafka is, and has way more applications outside of DOT compared to Kafka. Light Purple Woman can survive without the Dark Pink Woman, but the Dark Pink Woman literally combusts, explodes, and turns into a fart if you don't have a Light Purple Woman. And the final point I have to make today is that as much as I love this team archetype, the banner competition is looking really rough in 2.5. Fei Xiao's looking to be the best DPS for the hardest game mode in Honkai Star Rail. Of course that depends on what your account looks like, but I still believe AS to be pretty freaking difficult, and Robin is debatably the best character in the game. It's hard to recommend these two over the other two if you haven't got a copy of Robin already, or if you're struggling badly with AS. I do think the average Fei Xiao team is going to be stronger than the average Kafka Swan team. Robin is actually really good in DOT teams, so it's honestly a win-win scenario if you still want the DOT queens. Pick up a copy of Robin first, then get yourself the two other ladies. It's especially important to own Robin in this current day and age where Super Break demands raw Mei quite a bit. And of course, I think the other two are better pulls on their own. Meanwhile, you want both Kafka and Black Swan for this team's max potential. I will say that if you're struggling in PF and are having zero problems whatsoever with AS and MOC, then perhaps these two are better to get compared to Fei Xiao, but I have an extremely difficult time recommending Kafka Swan over a DPS that can zero cycle with all E0 teammates if they wanted to, like Fei Xiao can. I love this team with all my heart, and I feel like my opinion on Honkai Star Rail as a whole would be drastically different if I didn't have this team. I love playing it, I love the characters involved, as I quite literally get to play all my favorite characters in one team. Kafka, Black Swan, and then either Aventurine or Ho-Ho. It literally does not get better than this dude. Aside from that, the team's power level is great, and to all my fellow DOT fans, you guys are epic and I love you all a lot. Hopefully this video is able to tell you Kafka Swan's biggest pros and cons. This has been Juice, signing out, and the moment man devoured the fruit of knowledge, he sealed his fate. Entrusting his future to the cards, man clings to a dim hope. Yes, the Arcana is the means by which all is revealed.